we can all agree that it's been a remarkably, really just well done. It's just been wonderful. Um, I'm here to talk about a few things. But the first thing I want to talk about is the multiple overlaps between the various talks. And I've been keeping notes as we've been going, and the theme of resonance has come up again and again and again, but in different frames. Resonance as a physical experience, a resonance between pendulums, between bridges with the world. Resonance as something that happens within you, your own body talking to yourself. Resonance between art and creativity and innovation. Resonance between the idea of your past and it inflecting your present and finding ways to deal with that. It's just been an amazing evening of talks, and I find myself reflecting on what I was going to say, and I've just decided to change it because I think this is a much better version. So what I want to talk about are the deeply persistent structures that we all live within. So I'm going to talk about the resonance between the individual and the institution. We're sat here in the physical manifestation of an institution that is thousands of years old. Okay? It's a stunning piece of art, architecture, engineering. It has Wi-Fi. Somehow, amazingly, it has Wi-Fi, which I just love so much. And we're sat here behind all the history, both good and bad, of this institution. And what's interesting to me as somebody, I work in an institution I'm enormously proud of. It's called the University of Limerick. It's 50 years old or 51 years old. It's a very young university. It's very dynamic. It's been jumping up the rankings and doing all kinds of cool stuff. And I've been there for 17 years. But as unique and amazing as the University of Limerick is, it's really just a copy. It's a copy of every other higher education institution that you've ever seen. In fact, it goes back quite some way. This is Com El Dika. It's an amazing university structure, okay? It's in Alexandria in Egypt. It allowed for an audience of up to 800 people. It's from the 2nd century AD. And we know that it had lectures. We know it had scholars. We know it had students. We know it had a library. Presumably it had a pub, and it has every structure there. Looking at this, you can see the lecture theatre in the University of Limerick, Harvard University, everywhere you want to go. And these deeply persistent structures pervade our society. We actually have no idea how many there are until we start to think about altering them. And sometimes they're quite simple. They're kind of norms, And I give this idea to my students all the time. Imagine you get on to a bus. You walk to the top of the bus. There's a man at the back of the bus. Where do you sit? Each of you instinctively knows the answer, okay? Now I want you to imagine what would happen if you went over and sat beside that man. Now notice what happened in the audience. People would, oh my God. He would freak out. Wouldn't he? He'd be like, oh my God. Right? He would be very, 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 very confused. Maybe positively, maybe negatively. Either way, you've broken a norm, haven't you? And so we swim in the sea of institutional and social norms that reflect back on us in certain ways. There are things you simply don't do, both minor and major. There are things that you simply can't do, legal, illegal. And we walk within these structures all the time. In a university setting, we have a lecture theatre, we have a lecturer, we have students, we have exams, we have a structure. The structure repeats year after year after year after year. So I became aware that I was perpetuating this structure. Now I'm very proud of that. I don't think it's a bad thing, but it behooves us as intellectuals to really think about why you're doing that. And some of these structures don't make any sense, right? They don't make any sense. They only exist because we did them yesterday, right? These persistent deep structures, they only exist, and they don't have any other claim on our time or our emotions or our energy but for the fact that we did them yesterday. I find that extremely bad and poor as a reason to continue doing anything, the fact that we did it yesterday. It might work, it might not, that doesn't matter. The point is we should examine it. And so together with some colleagues at the computer science department and with the support of several generous funders, we started building a new kind of course that tore apart these existing structures and really looked at them and really asked, do we really need this? Do we need an amphitheater? Do we really need this? Do we need some guy, and let's be honest, it's usually a guy, standing there going, yap, 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 right? No, you don't. And so we came up with what we called the BSc, MSc in Immersive Software Engineering. What it is very simply a master's degree that you get in 3.5 years. It features 50% of the time in a space that we designed within the university and 50% of the time working in companies. And if this sounds like an apprenticeship or something like that, it's not. It's totally different. Everything about this was designed from the ground up. There are no lectures. There are no end-of-term exams. There's no internship. There are no tables. There's no chairs. We just tore them out. We built a bespoke space just for these students. That's them. We're incredibly proud of them, each of them. They're out now in the world working as software engineers. So they go out, they come back, they change the curriculum. We give them permission to change. They come back in, they wave back out. This is what we do. And it's incredibly challenging and difficult, and it's filled with failure. It's filled with things that don't go right. It's filled with stress. It's also filled with fantastic moments and just genuinely amazingly deep personal connections, but also just a feeling of real, genuine innovation. And sometimes innovation feels like you're walking through cold peanut butter, you know? And it's not fun because you're disturbing the firmament. And to be clear, the University of Limerick is probably the only place on earth where this could be done. But even the university was forced us to ask, why are you doing this? This works. Why are you changing what obviously works? And the answer is, it's not obvious that it's the best. It's just the longest lasting. And so we needed a new filter, because when this course debuted, it debuted with incredibly high points. The students are extremely smart, and we thought, we're not trying to ask them to maximize a grade anymore, because grades, you know, do you need a grade just because you did it yesterday? Maybe not. So what's the filter? We took the filter from sports, actually. The criterion for how you do well is given by Becky Hammon. So she's the first female coach in the NBA. She's the coach of the San Antonio Spurs. And this was the least scary photo I found of this woman. Okay. I mean, these, you know, Devin was talking about healing trauma earlier on. You can see the two lads being like, you know, after she's given them some tactics. The filter is excellence and agency. So the excellence idea comes from the idea that we expect the best, not your best, the best, okay? There's an objective criterion of excellence, and you're expected to go to it and beyond it. There's a very important point here, because it puts the entire focus of the students' learning on themselves. It says, you are responsible for your learning. We are here to facilitate your learning. We deeply, deeply, deeply want you to learn. But you have to learn by doing, which means you need to do. And in order to do, you need to get up and make it happen. And that's very, very important. Along with excellence comes the idea of agency. It's your learning. It's your experience. And we are the whole team is built around making sure that this experience is amazing for these students. We also did things that lecturers, as far as I'm aware, have never done before, which is to stand in front of a class as the professor and say, we don't know what we're doing. And just be very humble about the fact that this is an experiment and include them in the design of the next version of the experiment. This is really complicated, tricky stuff because you're dealing with people's futures and you have to take that level of seriousness to it. But we do, and we did, and we will, and it's working. The students went out into their placements, they went out in the world, met all the employers. I asked how are they getting on, and they said, it's everything we can do not to steal them from you right now. Companies that have supported this course did so by taking a huge risk, and the risk has paid off. So far. We're only in our first year, our second year is just about to start on Monday. But I wanted to leave you with 3 things that I've learned from this process. We've been at this now for 4 years. We're going to bring out other courses like this. It's been an amazing experience, both positive and negative. I've learned a huge amount about how to do new things, genuinely new things. And it's been a tricky few years in one respect, but the most interesting in others. And here's, I think, I'm trying to distill it down to the things that I've learned that I think you might learn from and maybe take back to your life. So the first is the following. Everything is in the past, but it is elsewhere. So what I mean by that is, when we were looking to design the new space for the ISE students, what we did was, we looked at examples of truly collaborative spaces, and what we found were the best places were kind of architecture studios, artists' studios, and what they look like is just basically bare walls that you can add stuff to, desks and stuff, and then nothing else. Which, if you're used to a classroom, an amphitheater setting, with somebody standing on top, and we had to subvert the whole thing. And so we built a computer science lab that looks a lot like an artist's studio. So, and not just any artist's studio. So if you look at images on the web and you compare it to some of the studios of famous artists in the past, you'll see whose studio gave us inspiration. And I'm not going to tell you because I want you to check it out because we're very proud of the space. The other thing to think about is that visions of the future, each of our visions of the future is actually conditioned on our dreams of the past. There's a great book by J. Storrs Hall called Where is My Flying Car? And it's a history of visions of the future. So in the 20s, they thought there would be flying cars, people would be eating pills for breakfast, and we would all work 20 hours a week. So we're just missing the flying car, really, basically. But the point is that the Jetsons and all that vision of the future that you had, that's where that is, that's where that comes from. But it's elsewhere. So you must look beyond your basic silo, beyond your discipline, beyond your words that you use to characterize yourself. And funnily enough, one of our colleagues has taught me a huge amount about this, and I've learned a lot by just not being within my own home discipline. The second thing I've learned is to look within the adjacent possible. When the motor car first came out, they wanted to use it to replace horses. The motor car got onto the land, and because the chassis was so heavy, it sank. So then they made the tires wider, but the chassis was still heavy, so it sank. And then an Irishman had the idea to bolt the wheels to the engine block, and thus was born the tractor. A tractor is an engine block on wheels, literally. It is the adjacent possible. It is the thing that is possible because it's beside the thing that exists. The immersive software engineering degree was possible because it exists in an institution that understood how to do work placements, that understood how to move things around and was brave enough to take the risk to make this work. What is the adjacent possible to the immersive software engineering degree? I have the answer because we're building it right now, but I'm not going to tell you guys tonight. because I've signed an NDA. And I would get sued. The third thing I've learned, and this is maybe the most important thing I've learned, is that every actual future is an active will. Each of us sits within a multiverse of things that we could do, we should do, we must do. The reality is the only one that ever matters is the one you actually do. And the only one you do is the one you will into existence. And I don't mean this in a Nietzschean sense, right? I mean in the sense of, I want to do this, so I'm going to make it happen. And in order to make this happen, what you have to do is step beyond what you thought you could do. And actually, it turns out it's not that hard. It's just a case of doing it, and it's more fun if you do it with your friends. But you have to choose to do it and get up and make it happen. So it comes back to the idea of excellence and agency. If you have a chance to do something to a really high level, and you all do, and everyone does, then you just need to decide that you're the one to do it and get up and do it. And it turns out, as long as you do it with your friends, it works out quite well. And so with that, thank you very much for your time and attention.